It's also important to get beyond your office walls and serve your greater community. Not only does it allow you the opportunity to improve life where you live, but giving back can be a great way to make connections and generate goodwill for your firm. Attorney Chris Munley of Munley Law in Pennsylvania is a great example of this. He is a highly acclaimed truck accident litigation attorney, champion of workers' rights, and the founder of Atlas Lawyers Legal Seminars. But outside of his contributions to the legal profession, Chris is dedicated to serving the local Pennsylvania communities that he's in. In today's episode, we'll chat with Chris about his community involvement, why he does it, and what steps he recommends to others who want to serve locally. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being invited.
Absolutely. Well, tell us first off about your practice and how you got started in the personal injury field.
Well, obviously a personal injury lawyer. My office uh, focuses on truck accident litigation, but also products liability, auto, workers' comp, and we've been in practice now for 66 years. I started because, like most people, I wanted to be like my dad, and my dad was a trial lawyer. And he wasn't just a trial lawyer. My dad was a superior trial lawyer. He was a gifted storyteller. Um, and he was a man who, up until he passed away, would say he thanked God every day he became a lawyer because it was the most wonderful job, and he loved every minute of it. And in fact, when he was retired for about 10 years before he passed away. He would come in and he would complain bitterly that age took his joy away, that he couldn't do the thing that he loved the most. So I wanted to be like that. I don't know that I can measure up to my father's skill. I mean, he was an amazing trial lawyer with tremendous victories, and he has set so many of the precedents in Pennsylvania for personal injury lawyers to follow with regard to liability damages, calculations, and because he came of age in a time when there really wasn't a personal injury practice. He started in 59 and then through the 60s, there really was not a personal injury practice in this country. And starting the late 60s and early 70s, the law began to morph and become more plaintiff friendly. And so there were a lot of areas that were unexplored, and he was a trailblazer. So
He
I
was
wanted to be like him.
You want to be like him, and what a great role model to have, and what passion to be able to follow. And if you can find the same passion within yourself, and clearly your family is very much involved in the firm and has been carrying on that torch that he lit so many years ago. And what a great way to give back to the Pennsylvania community through litigation, to be able to change the lives of those who have really fallen victim to certain circumstances around them, to be able to advocate for them and make their lives better in the practice that you have. And I think that's a beautiful story that has been carried on through your family. And so your family is dedicated to serving within the legal profession. But what first inspired you to get involved in your community beyond the legal practice?
Well, I think in life, when much is given, much is expected. And, again, it goes back to my dad. When my dad, his father died when he was very young. My grandmother raised two boys as a single parent, and starting in the 40s when there were no safety nets. They had nothing. I mean, really, it was a very, very difficult existence for them. And as my father got older and started practicing law, he always made room, no matter how little he had, he always made room to give something to those, in the community that were in need. And that has grown over the years. And I saw my dad do that. I mean, he was an incredibly generous man, and he had one unyielding philosophy, and that is, in order for charity to be true, it has to be anonymous. So he was always very, very careful to do the things he did, but never, ever, ever allow people to know he was behind it, because he just felt in his heart that it wasn't true charity. You weren't doing it for the right reason if you were looking to get the plaudits of the crowd. So that's really where it started. And my father had a great partnership with a local nun by the name of Sister Adrienne Barrett, who honestly was probably the closest I'll ever come to meeting a saint.
Mhm.
And she ran an organization she founded called the Friends of the Poor. And and her mantra was that that she protected the cursed, the forgotten, and the damned. And she didn't ask you to show proof that you were in need. If you were in need, if you said it, she gave it. And she went around and she got lots of people to donate. I mean, not just lawyers, doctors, congressmen, United States senators. I mean, she put the arm on everyone. She was only about 4 feet tall, and she was the most dynamic person. So when I was young, when I was in high school, I used to go serve her dinners. She had a big Thanksgiving dinner for the elderly poor, where they all came together. There was about 2,000 people at this dinner every year, and they fed them a full Thanksgiving dinner. And then a month later, she had another huge dinner for the same people for Christmas. And she felt that, 2 holidays out of the year, that it was really important to have some kind of connection with your fellow man. She wanted to make sure those who were marginalized, those who did not have family, were shut-ins, had a way to go out and break bread in the community. And so that's where it really started for me. I saw the difference that these little acts could have on the lives of people. And it's one of those things where you have to take satisfaction for the just for for satisfaction's sake. You can't want to go into this and have people say, "Oh, look, what a man, what a man! He's out there, he's buying turkeys, he's doing this." Those are the people that, I always get annoyed when I see them doing that, because they're not doing it to help their fellow man. They're doing it to get, the newspaper to write a story about them, or to get, or to get people talking about them in a positive way. And yes, they're doing good. Don't get me wrong. And all good is beneficial. But I don't know. I've always been of the opinion, and I've shared my father's philosophy, that if you're going to do it, and don't make a thing about it. I don't want to embarrass anybody, by doing it for them, and have them feel that, somehow they are beholden to me, because that is the wrong thing. But people will feel that way just because you did something nice for them. And that's why I try to do it as quietly and as anonymously as possible.
And I think that that is the right attitude to have. I mean, truly, when you are giving from your heart and you are invested emotionally, and giving of yourself to whatever cause it is, to be gracious in how you do it. It's not a quid pro quo. I'm not donating $1 million so that you have the news follow me around and around and do 12 different stories on whatever it is that I'm doing, because that's just disingenuous. And yes, there is good being done, but I think in order for goodwill to truly be established, it has to be coming from the right place. So I think that you have a great attitude about that. You and your father share a great philosophy about giving back to your communities from a true good-natured place. And I love that about you, your firm, and your family. But talk to us a little bit about the different organizations that you are involved with now, so that people who are listening can get inspired to go and join similar organizations and give back if they are looking for ideas of how to get involved.
Of all things, at one point I was on the board of directors of the local Girl Scouts. And a friend of mine, casually said, "Hey, would you like to serve on this board?" And I thought, why not? I had no idea what it would entail. And I was so happy when I got into it, because I realized that, I was on a community board with a lot of other people, and there is a camp locally, or there was a camp for the Girl Scouts. It was called Camp Archibald, and Girl Scouts from all over the region would go there in the summertime, and they would have outdoor events, and they'd have the outdoor experience. Now, my sisters went there when I was a kid, but I never went there, so I never saw it. Once I got on the board, I realized, oh my God, this is a horror. And these people on the board are like, isn't it wonderful? I'm like, no.
No.
No, these girls have to be better taken care of. These cabins are death traps. They don't have a pool. Well, there's a lake. I don't care. I wouldn't go in the damn lake. I don't want to go in
Right.
the, for God's sakes, pools have chemicals and you can clean them. The lakes don't. This
Lakes
isn't
have fish poo.
working,
Yeah.
you know? So, I had a real uphill battle because I had all of these other people who were from what we call, the manure counties, which are all farming counties, and and maybe that is a very acceptable, way in a very rural county, but it's not. I mean, you want to invite a child out to that. I think that she should have a great experience, you know, not be something out of a 1930s B movie,
Right.
especially
And
in the
if
modern
they're
day.
coming from the rural farming community, they can go jump in the lake in
Heck,
their own community and
these
give them
aren't,
something great
aren't
to look forward
these
to that's
aren't
different. And
farming community kids. These are kids that are coming from the inner city.
yeah.
And most of them have never been in nature, and they're living in canvas top tents, and it's like, whoa, God. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know if you've ever been in the Northeast in the summertime, but let me tell you, in the daytime, it's hot and there's a lot of bugs. But at nighttime, the temperature, especially in the early part of the summer, temperature drops precipitously and you're freezing.
Yes.
And then mosquitoes become a big problem. So I had a challenge there, but it was a great learning experience. They often ask me if I wanted the uniform, but I think that I had the legs for it. Because there were people who the people who worked there all were in Girl Scout uniforms.
Yeah. And so you were literally the odd man out.
I
But
really was. But it was a fascinating look at how all of it works, especially the cookies.
well, and what's interesting is, and something not to be overlooked is personal injury attorneys have a unique perspective coming into any sort of environment where they are in a leadership role, because you're able to look at this camp and see here's a hazard that somebody else might be like, oh, well, that's just good fun. So you
My my children, when they were growing up, would say all the time, "Oh, you are the death of fun, Dad." And oh, no, you can't go on the trampoline. No, you can't have a BB gun. No, you're not going to ride your bike on a main street. No ATVs, no
have.
quads. I was the death of fun. But I in my business, I see the other end of it. The unfortunate aftermath, and it's just not worth the risk. I mean, I just, the kids might be upset about it, but I had to deal with it too as a kid because my father did the same thing to me. And you know what? I'm here. I wasn't maimed. I avoided a lot of problems that my friends had growing up because my father was a plaintiff's lawyer.
And a lot of trips to the emergency room, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, bringing that unique perspective, you're able to better serve the communities that you're in. And I know that you have worked with Girl Scouts as well as a couple of other organizations, and clearly bringing your skill set to them. But in what ways has being active in these communities made you a better lawyer or even a better advocate for your clients?
Well, it allows you to understand how people think. As a lawyer, we all kind of live in a bubble. We think like lawyers. We look at things from a lawyer's perspective, um, and we look at things in terms of how the law will handle that. But that's not how everyone else looks at the world. And it's nice to get out and be among people who, tell you what they're really thinking, how they view things, what their opinions are on anything from politics, to gardening. and you get a better understanding of, who your friends and neighbors truly are. And it's really, it's very beneficial from a lawyer standpoint, because when you go to trial, you're in front of, the 12 butchers and bakers and candlestick makers who, make up the jury. And they're not 12 lawyers, they are 12 normal people. And if you come at a jury with the mindset of a lawyer, you are going to lose them quickly, and you're not going to understand how they are going to perceive the information that you're providing. Because that's the other problem that we have as lawyers, is that we get blinded by our information and we think, okay, it's this way, and we see that way the whole time. And you put it in front of 12 people and they're seeing something totally different. And unless you really have some kind of experience among your neighbors to get a good idea of how they think, you're going to fail miserably in front of a jury, because
Right.
you're not going to connect.
Yeah, you need to be able to
Not LA law. It is not Law and Order. There's not 30-second closings. There's no, Perry Mason moments. It's tedious boredom putting on a trial and being part of a case, but you have to know the exact thing that's going to resonate. And if you miss that, you're really in trouble.
right. If you can't empathize with your jury, you're going to lose them.
Right.
So going out and being able to talk to as many people as you can from as many different walks of life as you can, and figure out what resonates with them and what triggers them in different directions. Both to be able to paint a picture, but also to be able to serve your clients and empathize with them along the way.
Well, you get to see, I served on the board of this thing called the Lackawanna County Stadium Authority. And when I first was appointed to the board, we owned a AAA baseball franchise. And so we were basically, the five of us on that board were the owners of the ball club while we were on that board. And it was a remarkable experience to find out the other side of baseball, because I'm a huge baseball fan. And when I got to see the business side of baseball, I realized just how ugly and rotten and dirty it was. And it was really, it was an eye-opening experience. But running a baseball stadium in a small northeastern area, I always refer to where I live as Mayberry, because it is a very quaint, old coal region, but people, are kind and thoughtful. And, and a lot of people, live paycheck to paycheck. So, you get in there and you try to develop things that are going to benefit those people you want to bring to the ballpark, not necessarily the sponsors, because if they have money to sponsor, they have money. And they're not looking for something that they can afford to entertain themselves. They can go out and entertain themselves as they want. And so it was a very interesting time, because we then wound up selling our team to the New York Yankees. And I'm a Phillies fan. And everything about the Yankees, it's from a baseball standpoint, I'm in awe of a lot of their players. I mean, Aaron Judge was here in Scranton when I was on the board. We saw him all the time when he was a kid. He was a very nice, very, very, very nice young man. And there were a lot of people who went to the major leagues from here. So on a player standpoint, I absolutely love them. But from a business standpoint, God, I hated the Yankees. And they made it very difficult. And we did not get along. They wanted to threaten me, because I didn't want to go along with them. And I kept saying to them, go ahead and sue us.
Right.
I don't care. I'm a lawyer. I do this every day. Do you think the threat of being sued is something that's going to scare me?
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
by the way, you got to sue me here in Lackawanna County, not in Manhattan.
Right. Good luck with that.
We'll see who's who on this. If you guys are overstepping. So I had a lot of fights with them on that, but it was a wonderful experience. I had one experience with it that, I listen, there's nothing you really can do, to affect national politics. I mean, as an individual, but as the chairman of the Stadium Authority, I was the ultimate authority. And in November of 2020, I got a phone call from somebody in the White House, and they said Donald Trump wants to have his final rally the night before the election in Lackawanna County Stadium. And I
Mm.
said, now this was in the height of COVID. And I said, okay, are you guys going to wear masks? No. I said, okay, no, you can't come. What? You can't come. I'm not going to let you turn my ballpark into a super spreader event. There's no way in hell I'm going to let you do that.
Right.
And the guy said, well, who's your superior? And I started to laugh and I said, that's the funny part. I'm it. If you can't convince me, you can't come to the ballpark. So the guy said, well, can we park our cars in your parking lot and we'll go have it somewhere else? He said, are they going to wear masks? No, no, you can't park in our parking lot either. Well, we're going to pay. I said, I've heard about how you guys pay. I'm not going to get stiffed by you guys and be one of a long list of people looking for my money. No, thank you. Go somewhere else.
Right.
That was probably the most enjoyable part I had of my entire tenure on the Stadium Authority was telling them to go pound sand,
I
especially since what the hell, he was running against a boy from Scranton who
Right.
I know.
Come on now.
Hell, I wasn't letting him in the ballpark.
No.
No. way.
But that, man, what a great story. And you only get these stories by being
Genius.
involved in your community and saying yes to these opportunities.
Yeah.
And you just never know how life is going to go. And it's so easy for attorneys to get stuck behind the walls and get stuck in the grind and not get out and really live the full life that they are hoping for in this profession. And I feel for them because it's tough because so many personal injury attorneys get into this profession because they want to help people, because they want to be involved, because they want to make a difference. And I think that it is great that you have found some really impressive ways to get out there and do it locally. So, what would you say to attorneys who say that they're just too busy to get involved in civic or nonprofit work in their communities?
You have to find a way to make time. I mean, you see me sitting here. This is basically my perch, 5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day. And if I didn't do certain things, I would never leave this chair. I would be at this desk sitting, working, working, working. And getting out gives me a couple of things. First of all, it gets my mind off of work for a little while, which is nice. But it also gives me the opportunity to care about something else other than my own problems, and try to find a way, to try to find a way to enrich, or help somebody around me. I mean, years ago, there was a man who lived here in Scranton who was really a very talented model maker, and he built this beautiful train display. It was gigantic. And I used to take my kids to it all the time, and it was not far from my office. So on days that I had a break, I would just wander down and walk through and look at it because it was like being in Mr. Rogers' land of make-believe. Well, Mr. Clark passed away, and the family, was forced to have to, to take it apart. And I don't know how it happened, but I wound up buying it. And it sat for years in my attic because it was gigantic and I didn't know what the hell to do with it. So my sister was on the board. We have a museum in Scranton, and she was on the board, and they've been struggling. And I said to her, well, I've got this great train display up in my attic. If you want to put it up up there for the Christmas season, I mean, it really is something to see. Um, and they took me up on it. Now, I didn't have the platform. All I had were the buildings. So I had to teach myself how to build, these train displays. And I must have spent 250 hours working on it. But I did it. Well, I wanted it to be seen. I was sick of it being up in my attic. Not that the space was a problem, but that it should be seen. But I also wanted the museum, which has struggled financially for a number of years, to have a way to draw people in at the holidays. And it has been a huge, huge success for them because so many people grew up going through what this man called Don Clark's Miniature Memories. And he had it up in different places around the Scranton area for a good 30 years. So there were, several generations of people who grew up going to see this, who now are flocking back to the museum to see it again because they thought it was lost forever, that it was broken up, it might have been destroyed. So, I didn't have to leave my house. I went out and I was building this thing in the garage for weeks. They came and picked it up and it's up there. So, but it's made a huge difference for the museum, and it's made a big impact on people who grew up with it, who get to go back and revisit their childhood.
Well, and
And
not to mention the legacy of the original builder and his
oh
family.
yeah, and he was a genius. He really was. And he's been dead for 15 years and he was a very humble man. He was a bus driver. He was very much a homebody and he loved building these little buildings. And he built all of the major buildings by hand from the city of Scranton. So, there really is it's a wonderama of old Scranton. And that's people marvel at all of the businesses that are gone, that are in this layout. So there are different ways to just do something to help. You don't have to be the fundraiser. You don't have to be the chief cook and bottle washer. You can just be one cog in the wheel and make a difference. Because it helps the lives of everyone around you, and you get to hear all kinds of interesting stories, and meet all kinds of interesting people that you normally wouldn't when you go to these things, when you become part of them.
And you get to make these great connections because of you buying this train set and saying this legacy deserves to continue on, you were able to pull together the right people from the right places and make something that is really a local treasure, and that is a preservation of local history, and that is going to be cherished for years to come, not because you donated anything or not because you had a huge time or financial investment, but because you were able to make these connections from people that you met along the way.
And I have to be honest, all I wanted to do was buy the courthouse. What I wanted to buy when
Rest
I
of it had
thought,
to come
yeah,
with it, right?
all I wanted was the courthouse. But then when I looked at it and I thought, if this thing gets pieced out, piecemeal, and, it goes a little here, go there, it's gone forever.
Right.
And I started, and that started playing on me. And finally, I called the daughter back and said, you know what? I'll buy the whole thing. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And I don't even know how I'm going to explain this to my wife.
But and it came back in the end, and I love that. And just saying yes to the opportunities and being proactive in getting the right people lined up in the right ways and making things happen, I think is such a beautiful, beautiful story. And so if you have inspired listeners today, which I'm sure that you have, to go out and get involved and really make more of a difference outside of the courtroom, where do you suggest they start?
You can start in your local community. You can start with any charitable organization. You can help Meals on Wheels. They're always looking for people to help them. The Catholic Social Services, there's food banks. There's a lot of places where you can just go and offer your time. You can go to a food, to a soup kitchen and go in there and just hand out the food. You don't have to prepare it, or you can just be somebody that goes and does that because they need to depend on people to show up to help them with that. And those are the places where you're going to make the biggest difference for somebody who is really, really in a bad place in life. And the other thing about it that is a benefit to you is that it shows you that no matter what you think is going on in your life, yours is blessed, and that so many of these problems that you'll see are not the ones that you face every day. And and these are real world problems, not the make-believe problems that we make for ourselves, but these are the things that people really butt up against every day. Homelessness, food insecurity, not having clothing. I mean, you can, the easiest thing, you can just go in your closet and clean it out and not take it to, one of the Sally's or somewhere else, but take it to a local shelter and give it to them because they're just going to give it to people that are desperately in need. Just things like that, you can make a huge difference by just taking a few minutes out of your day, putting stuff in your trunk and driving down. So, the Christmas season is here. There's giving trees all over the place that you can go and you can buy toys anonymously for children, or you can be involved in organizations that do Secret Santas or do toy buying or food buying. And it is, I will tell you that it is something that that will stick with you, and it is rather addictive. When you see the benefit of, providing, help for somebody that just can't help themselves. I mean, not for any, not because they're lazy or they refuse to do stuff. It's just, they did not get the breaks in life. They did not have, certain advantages that the rest of us have. And you can really see that there, but for the grace of God, go I,
Right.
you know.
One of my college professors pounded it into us that we, at any given moment in life, are just a tragedy away from homelessness or away from these struggles. And it really hit home because I could very much see, one really bad accident, one really bad catastrophe, and everything that I have is gone. And
Oh,
it could
I
happen to absolutely anybody.
can.
And
I had a very good friend I went to law school with who was a lawyer, and he was extraordinarily successful. He had made a fortune at a very young age, and everything came crashing down. And he wound up losing his house. He wound up losing his license. He was living on people's couches. His health started to fail, and then you know, and then he died alone.
mm,
So, I mean, and this was somebody who was riding exceptionally high. I mean, really, really high, had everything together, and it all fell apart.
yeah,
So, that's a cautionary tale that I look at and think, at, at what point could that happen, in my life? And hopefully, if it ever did, there would be somebody there to lend a hand. That's the one thing you really hope for is that, that if you're down, there's somebody that's reaching down to pull you up.
right. Well, and it's amazing because there are things, these stories are happening all over the world. And my parents are both very much involved in international disaster relief efforts, as well as local disaster relief efforts through an organization called Samaritan's Purse. And they see people who are in the worst throes of life, whether it is from a natural disaster or political disaster or disease or some sort of destruction wherever they are. And you I am just constantly taken back by the need that goes along with a single natural disaster or just one really bad event of whatever scope. But the profound impact that it has on people and how much need there is out there for people to just get together and serve and give what they have, give their time, give their money, give whatever resource they can to help people get back to life.
You can create your own without the need for having other people. And I will tell this to you because this is not a local podcast, although it's obviously anybody could watch it, but it's not a local thing. Along with many wonderful things my father did. My father founded a Christmas charity called the Lamplighters that started when he was a broke lawyer and with 5 kids, and he still found enough money to help one family back in 1960, and it's been going on since then. And it's a program where we find people in need and we provide toys for the children, clothes if they need them, an entire Christmas dinner for the whole family. And we and I get probably about 75 or 80 people every year to help in this endeavor, either buying toys, because this year, unlike years past, this year is bad. This year I'm over 500 children.
Oh,
Normally it's around 300. And I have to have an army of people just to buy the toys. And then I have to have another army on Christmas Eve to show up to deliver them because we take them to the door. And this was something my dad created himself. Never, and it's never, ever been publicized. Everybody who comes and is part of it is told. There's no talking about it, no posting on social media, nothing. It is just, if anyone asks where this is from, the answer is Santa Claus. And I tell everybody every year, I said, look around. We all grew up believing in Santa Claus, and then we got to a certain age and we realized, well, the entity that we understood as Santa Claus didn't exist. I said, well, take a look. Every one of you here today is Santa Claus.
yes.
Santa Claus does exist. It just doesn't exist in the fat bearded, red suited guy with the sleigh with reindeer. It's it's in the 37-year-old single mom who comes, or the 60-year-old couple whose children are grown who come and help me every year. They're all Santa Claus. They're all delivering the joy of this holiday, to children, to the parents. So these children wake up on December 25th and they have that experience. They have that really, that Christmas Day experience. And that's what my father wanted to establish, having grown up very, very poor and in a situation where there wasn't, there were some bad Christmases. He was very dedicated to making sure that there were children who, if he could help it, wouldn't find nothing. They would find something that that would keep them believing.
And giving them that joy. And I love that, that Santa Claus is really manifested in the goodwill and good nature of humanity. And it's easy right now around Christmas because we're all swept up in the goodness of the times, and we are reminded to be generous of spirit and to be giving. And what I hope from this podcast is that attorneys listening will not just listen now during Christmas, but will tune in other times of the year and know that there is still need. There's still need beyond wintertime. And as we head into spring and summer, be cognizant of the needs that are going on at the time where, somebody might love to be able to go to the Girl Scouts and go to the swimming pool, but they might not have a swimsuit. Well, find an opportunity to give back during other seasons too, and meet with food and clothes and gifts and toys, because we need that all year round. So thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today and talking about the different organizations that you're involved in, and hopefully inspiring some lawyers to go out into their communities and get involved as well.
Listen, it gives you a very warm feeling, and if nothing else, if you the one thing that all of my not only my kids but my nieces and nephews, my friends' kids have learned is by going out to some of these homes on Christmas Eve and seeing how some people live, they have a sudden realization that their life is so charmed, and that the things that they're squawking about are, just don't matter when they look and they see and they're delivering. There was one place we delivered, which is a dilapidated trailer park. I mean, this place was awful. It was Dickensian almost. It was so bad. And there's all these kids running around, and my kids got to see that, this is real life. And it helped them. It helped form them. It really did help form them. and give them a better perspective on things. So, it's not easy to do, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can spend as little as you can or as much as you can, but just doing something for someone else outside of yourself for no other reason than just to help, it's going to do so much for you. It's better than a Prozac. I could tell you
Yes.
that. It really is. It gives you a sense of that that your station in life, you have purpose.
Right. Yeah. It was always told to me that if you're feeling down, who have you helped today? Go and find someone else to help and it'll bring you both up.
Yep.
So I love that reminder. Well, thank you again so much. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on today.
Thanks, Lindsay. I'm so grateful that you had me on, and I want to thank you for coming to Atlas and speaking and being part of it, because that's how you and I actually, you called me to do this.
Yes.
It's like, hey, I've got this thing I'm doing. You want to come? So, we've been planning this now since probably since probably late summer.
Yeah. It's been quite a few months now.
And I'm grateful because in this I got to meet a wonderful person who obviously has a business that is very impactful in the plaintiff's personal injury space. And then you have this wonderful podcast that you get people from all walks talking about not just the same old. There's so many podcasts, right? And everybody wants to be, everybody wants to thump their chest and talk about how great they are. I mean, and every time I hear one of those things, all I think is these people are so full of horse shit.
Yeah.
Joseph, anybody, those people are just full of it. But it is just different because you talk to people about normal things, not just, oh, hey, how do you be a super lawyer? How do you get that big verdict? How do you get that huge case? And that really is, I mean, that's interesting to me.
I love that. And it is something that I try to do with this podcast is I try to make connections and I try to give something good out of these episodes. But the big thing that I'm really after is finding what my guests are passionate about and whether it is passionate about the law in a certain type of case or passionate about giving back or passionate about what are you going to wear to court? It's whatever kind of gets you up
I'm
in the morning,
passionate about all of those things.
all of those things. And
You
I know that the listeners are, some of them share those same passions and they want to be able to incorporate that into their lives and find ways to do that. So thank you so much. That's really sweet of you.
Thank you. Well, listen, I'm honestly just telling you what I was thinking. I mean, it's very true. And I really enjoy your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm so glad to have had you as a part of it.
Well, listen, call me anytime.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
I'll see you at the next Atlas, kid.
See you at the next Atlas.